Who can marry Princess Leonor of Spain? When Princess Leonor of Spain stood before the Spanish Parliament to swear allegiance to the Constitution on her 18th birthday, the moment was widely reported as a milestone in her preparation for the throne. Less discussed, but equally significant in constitutional terms, is what that moment implied about her future personal decisions, especially marriage. For Spain's heir, marriage is not only a private matter but a constitutional question shaped by law, history, and democratic accountability. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly who can marry Princess Leonor, who cannot, and why those rules exist within Spain's modern monarchy. This question opens a much wider window into how constitutional monarchies function today. It reveals how tradition adapts to democratic frameworks, how personal freedom is balanced with public responsibility, and how Spain's monarchy has evolved since the late 20th century. And as we trace these structures carefully, the significance of those rules becomes clearer over time. This foundation leads naturally into the legal framework that governs the Spanish crown. Princess Leonor's position is defined first and foremost by Spain's 1978 constitution, adopted after the country's transition to democracy. This document reshaped the monarchy into a constitutional institution, limiting royal authority and placing it firmly within the rule of law. The monarch reigns but does not govern, and every major aspect of royal life with public consequences is addressed through constitutional or statutory rules. Marriage is one of those areas. Under Article 57 of the Constitution, the succession to the throne follows a clear order, and within that article lies a crucial provision: individuals in the line of succession who marry against the express prohibition of the king and the Cortes Generales, the Spanish Parliament, are excluded from succession. This clause applies directly to Princess Leonor as the Princess of Asturias. What matters here is not personal approval in a social sense, but institutional consent. The Constitution does not name specific categories of acceptable or unacceptable spouses. Instead, it establishes a process: consent must be granted by both the monarch and Parliament. This reflects Spain's post-dictatorship commitment to democratic oversight, even in matters traditionally considered royal prerogatives. This approach signals a broader shift in how monarchy operates in modern Europe, a shift that becomes clearer when we examine the historical reasons behind these safeguards. To understand why parliamentary consent exists at all, it helps to step back into Spanish history. For centuries, royal marriages were tools of diplomacy, designed to secure alliances, territories, or peace treaties. In pre-constitutional Spain, the monarch's marriage choices could alter the balance of power both domestically and internationally. These decisions were rarely private. They were matters of state, negotiated with other royal houses and foreign governments. Even when Spain transitioned through various political systems, monarchy, republic, dictatorship, and democracy, the memory of dynastic instability remained influential. By 1978, Spanish lawmakers were determined to prevent any personal decision from destabilizing the constitutional order. Marriage rules were therefore framed not as moral judgments, but as safeguards for continuity and legitimacy. The goal was to ensure that the future head of state would not be compromised by conflicts of interest, foreign influence, or constitutional uncertainty. This historical lens explains why the Constitution focuses on approval rather than prohibition lists. It allows flexibility while preserving institutional control, a balance that becomes even more important in a globalized world. That balance raises a practical question: what does approval actually depend on in modern Spain? In contemporary practice, approval of a royal marriage would rest on constitutional compatibility, not lineage or nationality alone. Spain no longer requires its monarch or heir to marry within royalty, nobility, or even European circles. The decisive factors are legal, political, and institutional. First, the prospective spouse must not create a constitutional conflict. This includes conflicts related to foreign allegiances, incompatible legal obligations, or roles that could interfere with the neutrality of the crown. The Spanish monarch is constitutionally required to remain politically neutral, and any marriage that might compromise that neutrality would raise concerns. Second, the marriage must respect Spain's legal order. The spouse would need to accept the constitutional framework, including the symbolic and representational role of the monarchy. This is not about personal beliefs, but about public responsibility. Third, parliamentary consent ensures democratic legitimacy. By involving elected representatives, Spain reinforces the idea that the monarchy exists within, not above, the democratic system. This process also protects the heir, by sharing responsibility for the decision across institutions. These criteria are intentionally broad, allowing each generation to apply them according to contemporary realities. That adaptability becomes clearer when we compare Spain with other European monarchies. Across Europe, constitutional monarchies have adopted similar but distinct approaches to royal marriage. In the United Kingdom, for example, the Succession to the Crown Act 2013 requires the first 6 people in line to the throne to obtain the monarch's consent to marry. Failure to do so results in exclusion from succession, but not invalidation of the marriage itself. In Sweden, the monarch must approve the marriage of an heir, and historically, disapproval has resulted in loss of succession rights. The Netherlands requires parliamentary approval for royal marriages if succession rights are to be retained. In all these cases, the pattern is consistent. Marriage is treated as a constitutional matter when it affects the head of state. Spain fits squarely within this European framework. What distinguishes it is the explicit requirement for both royal and parliamentary consent, reflecting Spain's emphasis on democratic legitimacy after its 20th century history. These comparisons highlight that Princess Leonor's situation is not exceptional, but part of a broader constitutional tradition adapted for modern governance. With that context in mind, it becomes important to clarify what the Constitution does not say. One of the most persistent misunderstandings about royal marriage rules involves assumptions about religion, nationality, or social background. Spain's constitution does not impose a religious requirement for the spouse of the monarch or heir. While Spain has a historical connection to Catholicism, the modern state is non-confessional, and the constitution guarantees freedom of religion. Similarly, there is no requirement that the spouse be Spanish. Historically, Spanish monarchs frequently married foreign royals. In the modern era, nationality alone would not be disqualifying. What matters is whether the marriage aligns with constitutional responsibilities and national interests. Social background is also not addressed in law. Nobility, aristocracy, or royal blood are not legal prerequisites. This reflects the democratic evolution of monarchy, where legitimacy derives from constitutional order rather than dynastic purity. By leaving these matters open, the Constitution allows Spain's monarchy to remain relevant and adaptable. At the same time, the approval mechanism ensures oversight. This flexibility brings us back to Princess Leonor's current role in preparation. Princess Leonor has been raised and educated with a clear understanding of her constitutional responsibilities. Her education, military training, and public appearances are structured to prepare her for the role of head of state. Marriage, within this framework, is one aspect of a broader life of service. Publicly available information shows that her preparation emphasizes duty, continuity, and institutional stability. The Spanish royal household consistently frames her future not in personal terms, but in terms of constitutional responsibility. This approach aligns with the way modern monarchies seek to maintain public trust. By emphasizing transparency, legality, and service, they reinforce their relevance in democratic societies. Marriage, therefore, is not treated as a romantic narrative, but as a constitutional decision that will be evaluated in its proper context when the time comes. That future-oriented perspective invites a closer look at how consent would practically be granted. If Princess Leonor were to marry while she remains heir, the process would be formal and public. The king, as head of the royal family and the state, would play a role in granting consent. Parliament would also be involved, likely through a formal vote or legislative procedure. This process would not be rushed. It would involve legal review, constitutional analysis, and public communication. Transparency would be essential, not to scrutinize personal life, but to affirm institutional integrity. Importantly, the Constitution does not dictate that marriage must occur at a particular time or under specific circumstances. It only sets conditions for succession. This distinction preserves personal autonomy while safeguarding the crown. The clarity of this process helps prevent uncertainty, a lesson drawn from earlier periods in European history when unclear succession rules led to conflict. That historical awareness continues to shape how Spain approaches its monarchy today. Spain's monarchy operates within a society that has undergone rapid social change. Attitudes toward marriage, gender equality, and personal autonomy have evolved significantly in recent decades. The Constitution itself reflects these changes, particularly in its commitment to equality before the law. Princess Leonor's status as the first woman to be first in line to the throne under the current constitutional framework underscores this evolution. While male preference primogeniture technically remains in the text, her position reflects political consensus and social acceptance of gender equality in leadership. Marriage rules, interpreted through this modern lens, emphasize equality and legality rather than restriction. They aim to ensure that the monarch can serve as a unifying symbol for a diverse society. This societal context reinforces why speculation and assumptions are avoided in responsible analysis. The focus remains on institutions, not individuals. From here, it becomes clear why the question, who can marry Princess Leonor, is ultimately about constitutional design rather than personal choice. At its core, the answer is both simple and nuanced. Princess Leonor can marry any person whose marriage is approved by the king and the Spanish parliament, in accordance with the constitution. There are no predetermined categories, no public checklists, and no automatic exclusions based on identity. What exists instead is a framework designed to protect the stability, neutrality, and legitimacy of the Spanish state. This framework reflects lessons from history, commitments to democracy, and the realities of modern governance. Understanding this helps demystify the monarchy. It shows that even deeply traditional institutions operate through rules, accountability, and public responsibility. And in that realization, the role of the heir becomes clearer, not as a figure apart from society, but as one shaped by its laws and values. As Princess Leonor continues her preparation for future responsibilities, questions about marriage will remain hypothetical until they become constitutionally relevant. What matters now is understanding the system that will guide those decisions when the time comes. This system is not designed to limit personal freedom unnecessarily, but to ensure continuity and trust in a constitutional monarchy. It reflects Spain's journey from absolute monarchy to democratic state, and its effort to balance tradition with modernity. In this way, the rules governing royal marriage tell a much larger story, about leadership, responsibility, and the evolution of institutions. That broader story offers a clear analytical takeaway. The key lesson is that constitutional monarchy transforms personal milestones into public responsibilities, not through control, but through accountability. Princess Leonor's future marriage, like her future reign, will be shaped by law, democratic oversight, and a commitment to institutional stability. This framework does not predict outcomes, it prepares for them. It ensures that when decisions are made, they strengthen rather than weaken the constitutional order. And in that sense, the question of who can marry Princess Leonor is really a question about how modern monarchies endure, by adapting carefully, transparently, and within the rule of law. Only 1 in 10 viewers here is subscribed. If you value thoughtful insights into royalty and leadership, join the community.